Good morning, everyone. We are the Group 5, and today we will discuss the Part 1 of Lesson 6 about trade protectionism. At the end of this lesson, you will be learning why governments try to enhance and restrict trade and trading processes, know and compare the potential and actual effects of government intervention on the free flow of trade, describe the regulations and restrictions in international trade, describe the relationship between foreign trade and international factor mobility, know how the growing complexity of products and trade regulations may affect the business in the future. Analyze how businesses may respond to import competition. Now, let's proceed in discussing trade protectionism. So first, let us discuss what is protectionism. So, protectionism is a governmental restrictions and support to influence international trade competitiveness. This means that governments can enact rules and regulations that make it harder or easier for businesses to compete in international trade. It can involve limiting imports or providing subsidies to domestic industries to make them more competitive. Physical and social factors affecting the flow of goods and services. Social and physical factors can have a significant impact on trade protectionism. Social factors such as cultural beliefs, values, and norms can influence a country's stance on trade protectionism. For example, country A places a high value on domestic industries and local jobs may be more inclined to implement protectionist measures to shield their industries from foreign competition. Similarly, country B that has experienced a history of exploitation by foreign powers may be more likely to support trade protectionism as a means of asserting their economic independence. Physical factors such as geography, climate, and resource availability can also play a role in trade protectionism. A country with abundant natural resources may be more inclined to protect their domestic industries that rely on those resources, while a country with limited resources may be more open to trade in order to access the goods and services they need. Conflicting results of trade policies. Trade policies may affect the ability of foreign producers to compete in a company's home market. They may limit or enhance the company's ability to sell abroad or acquire needed foreign supplies. The collective governmental restrictions and support to influence international trade competitiveness are known as trade policies. These policies can either limit or enhance a company's ability to compete in domestic and foreign markets. Despite of the free trade benefits, still governments intervene in trade to achieve economic, social, or political objectives. But conflicting policy outcomes to make it difficult to determine how to influence trade. Officials strive to help struggling industries without penalizing those doing well, but this is often impossible due to potential retaliation from other countries. For example, catfish importing was restricted to help workers in depressed areas, but the restrictions forced consumers in those same areas to pay higher prices. So, ang goal sini is to help other group pero sometimes makakos man siya unintended consequences sa other group, so dapat before ang government mag-impose ng certain policies, they need to think and consider the underlying factors that these policies may affect. Roles of stakeholders and consumers. Of stakeholders are those who will be affected by proposed trade regulations such as owners, workers, suppliers, and local politicians. Stakeholders are individuals or groups who are impacted by proposed trade regulations. They are mostly likely to speak up as they are most directly affected by the proposed changes. For example, a community of catfish farmers in the US who rely solely on their catfish farms for their livelihoods. If a new regulation passes that restricts their ability to farm, they may find themselves unemployed for the long term or forced to take lower paying jobs in different industries or towns, causing them to speak out in protest. So if amo ni ang matabo, farmers will lose their main job kag ma-decide na lang mangita obra in other places kag kung ang ina na job ang salary hindi kataasan compare sila ginakita sa ila farms, it can cause them nga mag-speak out for themselves or protest. Role of consumers. Important stakeholders who prioritize purchasing the best product for the price, often without knowledge of its origin. As we all know, consumers play a significant role in the economy as they buy products and services from businesses, thereby supporting their growth. However, consumers are often unaware of the impact of import restrictions on retail prices and the economy as a whole, as these costs are spread out among many people over time and involve only a small price increase for individual purchases. For example, import restrictions on peanuts and sugar in the US increase the domestic price of peanut butter and confectionery products, but even if consumers were aware of this, it is unlikely that it would motivate them to demand that the government takes action to address the situation. So in this situation, even maput ba restrictions in government, hindi mareklamo ang consumers, especially sa mga consumers, na mas prioritize ang quality or brand sang isa ka product than its price. Kag we all know nga price is one of the most important factors nga naga-influence sa consumer behavior when it comes to purchasing confectionery products. So if ang price ng confectionery products is too high, consumers may opt to purchase cheaper alternatives or reduce their overall consumption of confectionery products. Pero if ang price ng confectionery products is too low, other consumers may perceive the products as low quality or suspect that they contain subpar ingredients. Next, why governments intervene in trade. So these are the different factors in economic rationales and non-economic rationales why government intervenes in trade. So in economic rationales, they are fighting unemployment, protecting infant industries, promoting industrialization, improving comparative position, and in non-economic rationales, maintaining essential industries, promoting acceptable practices abroad, maintaining or extending spheres of influence, and presenting national culture.
In economic rationales, fighting unemployment, there is probably no other group that has more time and incentive to protest publicly and contract government representatives than the unemployed. Workers displaced because of imports are often the least able to find alternative work, such as the fairly unskilled catfish workers in depressed regions. When they do, they generally less than before. Moreover, they often need to spend their unemployment benefits to survive in the short term, and they put off retaining because they hope to be recalled to their old jobs. When they do seek retraining, many workers, especially older ones, lack the educational background needed to gain required skills, or they train for jobs that do not materialize. Three factors to consider restriction. Number one, fewer imports of a product mean fewer import handling jobs, such as those in the container shipping industry. Number two, Given the global complexity of production, import restrictions on one industry will likely cause lower sales in other industries because they must incur higher costs for inputs and components. For example, US import restrictions on steel race, automobile, and farm equipment manufacturing costs. Number three, imports stimulate exports, though less directly, by increasing foreign income and foreign exchange earnings, which foreign consumers then spend partially on new imports. Thus, restricting earnings abroad has some negative effect on domestic earnings and employment. Protecting infant industries is one of the oldest arguments for protectionism. It holds that a government should shield an emerging industry from a foreign competition by guaranteeing it a large share of the domestic market until it can compete on its own. Many developing countries use this argument to justify their protectionist policies, especially if entry barriers are high, foreign competition is formidable. The infant industry argument presumes that the initial operating cost for an industry in a given country may be so high as to make its output non-competitive in world markets. Eventually, competitiveness is the result of the efficiency gains that take time. Therefore, the industry's government needs to protect it long enough for its fledgling companies to gain economies of scale and their employees to translate experiences into higher productivity, enabling efficient production and international competitiveness. The government can then recoup the cost of trade protection through benefits like higher domestic employment, lower social costs, and higher tax revenues. Although it's reasonable to expect production to cost to decrease over time, they may never fall enough to create internationally competitive products.
Developing industrial base. Countries with a large manufacturing base generally have a higher per capita GDPs or gross domestic product than those who don't. So why is it important to develop our own industrial base? Because it is a key factor of for our economic, technological, and social progress with far-reaching implications for a nation's well-being and competitiveness in the global arena. Just like United States and Japan, they develop an industrial base so they largely restrict imports. So we all know that Japan's manufacturing industry is the driving force that has supported the Japanese economy to the extent that they become the third largest economy in terms of GDPs and they are one of the manufacturing superpowers. Developing industrial base operate under the following set of assumptions. First is surplus workers can increase manufacturing outputs more easily than agricultural outputs. So surplus workers can potentially increase manufacturing outputs more easily. However, it is important to note that increasing manufacturing outputs with surplus labor also depends on factors like availability of raw materials, access to market, infrastructures, and government policies. While surplus workers can boost manufacturing, it should be accompanied by the efforts to improve worker skills and overall business environment to maximize positive impacts. And second is inflows of foreign investment in industrial sectors promote sustainable growth. When we say inflows of foreign investment in the industrial sector to promote sustainable growth, it means that foreign investment in the country's industrial activities has the potential to contribute to long-term economic development in a way that the environmental responsibility, socially inclusive, and economic valuable. This approach aims to balance economic growth with environmental and social well-being to create more prosperous and equitable future. Third is prices and sales of agricultural products and raw materials fluctuate widely, which is detriment to economies that depends heavily on just one or few commodities. This means that when the price and sales of agricultural products and raw materials experience significant and unpredictable fluctuation, it can have a harmful effect on economies that they rely heavily on just one or few of these commodities as their main source of income. Fourth is market of industrial product grow faster than markets for commodities. it highlights a signi- it highlights a shift in economic dynamics where industrial products and manufactured goods are becoming more prominent drivers of economic growth compared to the primary commodities that serves as their outputs. Fifth is industrial growth reduces imports and or promotes exports. This means that when a country's industrial sectors expand and becomes more productive, it tends to import fewer goods from other countries while increasing its export of domestically produced goods. Last is industrial activities help the nation building process. Industrial activities encompass manufacturing, production, and various economic processes that generate goods and service. When a nation's industry thrives, it can lead to several benefits for country's economic growth, job creation, and many more.
Unregulated importation of lower-priced manufactured prevent the development of a domestic industry. So these arguments suggest that unregulated importation of lower-priced goods can hinder the development of domestic industries. So the fear is that relying too heavily on cheap imports may prevent the growth of local industries, leading to economic stagnation. So, what are the potential benefits of import restrictions? So, import restrictions can encourage foreign direct investment, which is FDI. So, FDI brings capital, technology, and jobs to the host country. By limiting imports, a country may attract more foreign investment. So, since my potential benefits ang import restrictions, syempre may araman sa challenges and risks. So, over-reliance on manufacturing due to import restrictions may shift dependence from agricultural commodities to manufactured products. So, this shift possess competitive risks and potential obsolescence if the manufacturing sector doesn't remain competitive. So, diversification of export earnings is not guaranteed, especially in developing countries with limited resources. So, in summary, industrialization industrialization arguments on while import restrictions can protect domestic industries, they have also come with risks. So, balancing is crucial for sustainable economic growth. Next is term of trade. The ratio between a country's export prices and its import prices. So, developing countries traditionally promote industrialization by restricting imports to, to boost local production and consumption. However, if, protect, if protected industries fail, ang mga local consumers pagbayad higher prices or taxes. So another meaning of term of trade, it refers to exchange. Um, yes, it refers to the exchange ratio between a country's export prices and its prices. It's basically it's a quantity can buy from selling one unit of a particular export. So example na dito ang refrigerator na mabakal sa isa ka country ito another. Port substitution. Import substitution restricting imports in order to boost local production and consumption of products they would otherwise import. Next is export-led development, an approach promoting the development of industries with export potential. So, ang export development, ang siya ang ginagamit sa mga countries like Taiwan and South Korea um, to lead rapid economic growth. Rapid economic growth by focusing on increasing exports of goods and services to international markets. So, this approach often involves developing strong manufacturing sectors, promoting exports, and attracting foreign investment. So, by leveraging global demand, these countries have achieved significant economic progress. Economic relationship with other countries. Every nation monitors its absolute economic welfare, compares its performance to that of other countries, and enacts practices at improving its relative position. So, in this passage, nations compare their economic performance to that of other countries. Benchmarking against first helps identify areas for improvement and potential best practices. So how to improve relative position? To enhance its relative position, a nation employs several strategies. So ano nga mga strategies? So we have balance of trade adjustments, gaining comparable access to foreign markets, using restriction tool as a bargaining tool, and controlling prices. So balance of trade adjustments, a trade deficit creates problems for nations with low foreign exchange reserves and funds that help finance the purchase of priority foreign goods and maintain the trustworthiness of a currency. So, ang balance of trade adjustment ga-manage ng mga imports and exports para ma-maintain ang favorable trade balance. So the two options that can affect its competitive position broadly are number one, creating or currency, which makes basically all of its products cheaper in relation to foreign products. Second, relying on fiscal and monetary policy to bring about lower price increases in general than those in other countries. So next is comparable access or fairness. Companies and industries often use the comparable access argument, which shows that they are entitled to the same access to foreign markets as foreign industries and companies have to theirs. So comparable access, also known as fairness, it is a concept often used by companies and industries to advocate for equal access to foreign markets. The underlying economic theory suggests that when businesses have comparable access to markets, it can lead to reduced production costs due to economies of scale. However, this approach can pose challenges for governments. They would need to negotiate and monitor separate agreements for various products and services, which can be both restrictive and practical. In summary, while comparable access promotes fairness and economic efficiency, kinanglan po, require careful consideration of practical implications for governments and regulatory bodies. So the two practical reasons rejecting the idea of fairness, tit for tat market access can lead to restrictions that may deny one's own consumers lower prices. Second, governments would find it difficult to negotiate to separate agreements for each of the many thousands of different products and services that might be traded.
So return tool as a bargaining tool. Threat or imposition of import restrictions may be a retaliatory measure for persuading other countries to lower their import barriers. So using import restrictions as a bargaining tool means that can impose such restrictions as a way to persuade other nations to reduce their import barriers. This approach is essentially a form of negotiation through economic measures. On the other hand, the danger is that each country then escalates its restrictions, creating in effect a trade war that has a negative impact on their economy. To use restrictions successfully as a bargaining tool, we need to be very careful in targeting the threat, particularly to consider two criteria. Next, first is believability. Either you have access to alternative sources for the product or your consumers are willing to do without it. So believability in this context means that the product is considered reliable or credible. This credibility is based on having access to alternative sources for the product or the willingness of consumers to forego if it's not available. Second, exports of the product you're restricting are significant to certain parties in the producing country, part influence to prompt changes in their own country's trade policy. The importance of a product in terms of trade restrictions is linked to the fact that the export of the product matters significantly to the parties in the producing country. These influential parties can have enough sway to influence changes in the country's trade policies, making the product export restrictions a matter of importance. Next, price control objectives. Countries sometimes withhold goods from international markets in an effort to raise prices abroad. Price control objectives involve countries intentionally limit the supply of goods in international markets to boost prices in foreign markets. These strategies aimed at increasing the value or export by increasing scarcity in other countries. In addition, this is most feasible when a few countries hold near monopoly control of certain resources and then limit supply so consumers must pay a higher price. However, this policy often encourages smuggling such as emeralds and diamonds, the development of technology such as synthetic rubber in place of natural rubber, or different means to produce the same product such as caviar from farm grown rather than wild sturgeon. Export controls are especially ineffective for digital products because they are so easily copied abroad. Moreover, if prices are too high or supply is too limited, people will seek substitutes such as ethanol or petroleum. A country may also limit exports of a product that is in short supply worldwide to favor domestic consumers. But there is but a fear that producers will price their exports so artificially low that they will drive producers out of business and in importing countries. If they succeed, there are two potential adverse consequences for the following economy. First, we have First, we have the foreign producers may be shift their country's unemployment abroad, but their own taxpayers are subsidizing the purchases by consumers abroad. It means that foreign producers may move jobs overseas, causing unemployment in their own country. Still, they often provide subsidies to make their products cheaper for consumers abroad, which means their own taxpayers help fund these lower prices in foreign markets. Promoting acceptable practices abroad. Governments use national defense arguments to prevent the export, even to friendly countries.
If there are high entry barriers, surviving foreign producers can charge exorbitant prices once their competitors go out of business. However, competition among producers from different countries usually limits anyone's ability to charge exorbitant prices. When there are high entry barriers, only a few foreign producers can enter the market. This allows them to charge higher prices, but competition from other foreign producers prevents them from charging exorbitant prices.
Companies sometimes export below cost or below their home country price, a practice called dumping. Most countries restrict imports of dumped products, but enforcement usually occurs only if the imported product disrupts domestic production. If there is no domestic production, then host country consumers get the benefit of lower prices. Companies may dump products to introduce them and build a market abroad essentially. A low, a low price encourages consumers to sample the foreign brand, after which they can charge a high enough price to make a profit. However, the major motive from a national standpoint is to increase domestic employment. The optimum tariff theory states that a foreign producer will lower its prices if the importing country places a tax on its products. If this occurs, benefits shift to the importing country because the producer lowers its profits on the export sales. There are many examples of products whose prices did not rise as much as the amount of the imposed tariff. However, it is difficult to predict when, where, and which exporters will voluntarily reduce their profit margins. In fact, in a criticism of optimum tariff is that developing country exporters reduce payment to their workers rather than absorbing the full impact through a lower profit margin, thus sometimes causing severe hardships.
Non-economic rationales maintaining essential industries. Governments apply regulations to essential domestic industries at this time, so the country is not dependent on foreign supplies during war. This is called essential industry argument. Maintaining essential industry is critical for nation security, stability, and well-being. It ensures that a country can meet its fundamental needs and citizens can maintain economic prosperity even in the face of challenges and uncertainties.
Promoting acceptable practices abroad. Governments use national defense arguments to prevent the export, even to friendly countries, of strategic goods that might fall into the hands of potential enemies. They also limit trade to promote changes in foreign country policies or capabilities. So governments restrict the export of strategic goods to ensure that these items do not inadvertently end up in the hands of potential adversaries or enemies. Governments also use trade restrictions as a tool of diplomacy to influence changes in the policies or capabilities of foreign countries. By limiting or controlling trade with specific nations, governments can exert economic pressure to encourage those countries to align their actions with the exporting countries' foreign. Example, governments may restrict trade to promote human rights improvements, environmental protections, or geopolitical stability in the target country. This approach leverages economic incentives to encourage policy changes.
So the two remaining non-economic rationales will be discussed by the next group. So that's the end of our discussions in part 1 of lesson 6.